this computer, then I'll send it to you guys. So as you know, my name is Deborah Scheffler. I'm a business attorney. I've been practicing for 27 years, and I've been working with medical aesthetics practices for about 15 years, almost exclusively. And interestingly, and you all have probably seen the big boom. And since, when 2020 hit, I was going, well, this will be interesting. Let's see what happens. And med spas just exploded. And I mean, I helped a lot of people navigate that whole, the California rules with the shutdown and everything, and lots of other challenges that came along with that. And I think that, women sat in front of these Zoom videos and looked at themselves and said, holy moly, I got to do something about this face, which is why medical aesthetics has boomed so much. So anyway, I'm going to pull up my PowerPoint here so I can start talking to y'all. And if you would just mute yourselves for now, that would be great. Where is my PowerPoint? Let me open it. Let's see, let's get that open. Aha, here it is. Yay. Okay, let me go back to the beginning. Start at the very beginning and make it full screen. Okay, can everybody see this? Somebody else was just trying to come in too. All right, what the heck happened there? Are you guys all there? Is everybody there? Can somebody speak?
I'm here. I think,
I told you to
yeah,
mute.
I think we're all.
Okay, I'm trying to, the hell? My computer's acting so weird.
There it is. I think.
You silly goose, you. Okay, so we're talking about, why isn't this mouse showing on here? So hold on one second. I'm just trying to get technology going. There's something in the chat. Okay, let's do this. Let me just do this. Why can't I see my mouse? And this is all going to be on recording now. I'm going to stop share for a second and go back to it. Sorry. Why is the mouse not? Oh, I know what happened here. Maybe this thing. Why isn't the mouse showing on here? That is so weird. Okay, so I have two screens in front of me, the screen that has the camera on it and my other screen. So why is this mouse not showing on this screen? This is so weird, you guys. And I've done this like thousands of times.
PowerPoint was showing on a second ago, the PowerPoint you
had. I can't, I need to get to the beginning. Okay, there we go. So can you see it?
I can see you.
Okay, you can't see the PowerPoint. Okay, let's do that again, sorry. And we'll do the share. And there's my mouse. And now we're going to go to the first slide. Can you see that?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
You see the slide and the little ones along the side, or do you just see the main screen?
We see the ones along the side too.
Let's try this again. So I'm trying to get the full picture here. Now, do you see it?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Goody, so do I. Okay, so we're talking about compliance today, and this is all about protecting everyone's license. That's our primary goal. So in order to do that, the first thing I like to talk about is one of my passions, which is wolves. I'm a wolf advocate, and I work with wolves in the flesh and have been involved in the capture of wolves. So I'd like to point out one piece of wolf trivia before we start, and that is that, as you notice, this wolf has gold eyes, and wolves have gold eyes. And that's one way you can tell if you're looking at a dog or a wolf, or if the animal might have some wolf blood in it. So that's my little gift to you as a piece of wolf trivia. My disclaimer is that nothing in this presentation is intended to be or should be taken as legal or tax advice. The information contained herein is generally informative in nature and does not necessarily apply to any specific situation or legal need. Attendance at this presentation does not create an attorney-client relationship nor an expectation of confidentiality regarding anything you may disclose to the presenter, which is me. So just like you all get consent forms, I have to have a disclaimer too. One of the main things I want to point out is that medical aesthetics is real medicine. And, you know, I probably have 200 med spas in my roster that I work with, and I get new calls. I get 2 or 3 new calls every single week. And I'm going to talk about semantics. The words we use are really important in protecting our licenses in this area of medicine. And it is medicine. This is when a patient comes to the practice, they are coming to a doctor's office, and the medical board and the nursing board and the PA board all have the expectation that this medical practice is operated in the exact same way as an OBGYN or an oncology practice or a general practice or an orthopedic practice or any other practice there is. So we want to really keep that first and foremost in our minds when we're talking about protecting our license. We are, you all are overseen by the medical board, the nursing board, the PA board also, and the Department of Consumer Affairs investigators are the law enforcement arm of these boards. So my board also, the state bar, the Department of Consumer Affairs are the law enforcement agents of those agencies. So if you ever run into them during your career, my advice is always to respond to them in the same way that a criminal defense attorney would advise you to respond to the police in a potential criminal investigation. And what is that? What are we supposed to do when the police start questioning us?
Get an attorney.
And we don't talk, right? Because they will, and you know, we want to rely on our law enforcement and we want to rely on these people to protect us and do their job. But you know, their egos get involved and they want to, you know, they want to accomplish a certain thing, and they will twist things around. They may not hear, you know, giving them the benefit of the doubt, they may not hear something exactly the way that you presented it. So we want to stop talking. If they come knocking on the door of your practice or the practice where you're working, your response is going to be, the doctor's not here right now. And if the doctor is there, his response is going to be, I can't talk to you, but give me your card and I'll have my lawyer contact you. If any of you all are there and the boards ever come around, your response to them is, the doctor's not here right now, but if you give us, you know, your card, we will have him or the practice attorney contact you. And that's it. You don't have to let them in. You don't have to show them around. You don't have to talk to them. Now, what happens sometimes, and one of the reasons I talk about this right out front is because a fair percentage of my practice has to do with defending these board investigations. And these investigations are relatively common in medical aesthetics because many people don't look at this as real medicine. They kind of approach it as kind of some hybrid between the beauty industry and real medicine. And although we are, you know, enhancing people's appearance, this is real medicine, and that's how the boards look at it. Like I said, I don't need to beat that horse to death. So these investigations do happen from time to time. And so we want to just make sure that we get right out in front of them immediately so they're handled correctly. Because the more efficiently they're handled, the less likely there's going to be any negative impact on anyone's license. So what we're going to cover today are the supervising physician and his role. In your case, it's a male. Scope of practice for the professions, charting, HIPAA, and HIPAA and is Dr. DeCourty here?
Yes, I was just going to tell you that he's on the call. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
Are you here? Okay, great, awesome. Nice to meet you after all this months of seeing
Nice to
your,
meet
sending you emails. And I was just talking about, one of the things we're going to cover is the supervising physician. And then scope of practice, charting, HIPAA and PHI, marketing and social media. I just wanted to touch on some things where I've seen people get in trouble before. And then patient complaints, I was asked to address that. So we'll go over these things. We just want to, again, talk about what the practice of medicine. I don't think I need to drill this down too deeply, but this is the definition of the practice of medicine. And this is what we're doing. We are delivering services to patients for their health care. And we're delivering services that are monitored by the Medical Practices Act and the Nursing Practices Act. So we are in the practice of medicine. There's no argument about that here. Supervising physician, it's really important that in these practices, there is a supervising physician. The supervising physician is the boss and the owner of the practice, and everyone needs to keep that in the very front of their minds, because one of the types of complaints that will come in medical aesthetics, especially when the doctor's not there day in and day out, which most of them are not in these practices, is people will say, well, there's a nurse running the show over there. There's no doctor. So that's unsupervised practice of medicine, or failure to supervise, or aiding and abetting the unsupervised practice of medicine. And these are business and professions codes violations. And if they are true, whoever is being accused of this, practicing without supervision or failing to supervise, will have a penalty against them. They'll have an accusation filed against them, and there will be a penalty. And in most cases, the penalty will be some kind of probationary term between 1 and 5 years. And there's huge cost recovery. You have to pay a lawyer to defend you. And this is not medical malpractice. So if your malpractice coverage, you can get coverage for board investigations from your malpractice carrier. And I do recommend that clients look into that, because even though that's part of what I do, for your benefit, I'd rather help you make money, right, than have to drag you out of a mess. So even though this is part of what I do, if you can get your carrier to cover it, then at least the attorney's fees in the defense of that, of any kind of an accusation that would ever be filed against a doctor or nurse or PA, would be covered by the insurance carrier. So they would provide you with an attorney, just like malpractice. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that it's open and obvious to anyone that walks in the door of that clinic that Dr. DeCourty is the owner and the boss. He's the supervising physician. So the things that I recommend that people do are, for instance, have a photograph of the supervising physician. So when people walk in that door, it's going to be in the reception area, and it's going to be a nice picture of his handsome face, and it'll say Dr. DeCourty, medical director, so that it's really obvious. And all of you should understand that he is your boss. And even though he may not be there day in and day out, he's the person who, whether you know it or not, he made the final decision on you being hired, since he's been there. And before that, it might have been another doctor. And he will make the final decision on any new procedures that are offered there. He is the final decider, even though you all may not see that on a day-to-day basis. But it's important for you to know that, so that when you talk about, whose practice is this, it's Dr. DeCourty's practice, even though Melanie might be the one who's, really kind of in the trenches there. So we have, do we have any PAs here?
Nurse Eileen, a nurse practitioner, but no PAs.
Okay, so we'll just talk about RNs and NPs. So RNs, the physician is solely responsible for the charts and oversight. There are standardized procedures in a standing order, but every professional should understand what their scope of practice is and stay within that scope of practice. And I'm sure you all do, because you're all licensed professionals and you're all, I'm sure, doing a great job. NPs are nurses. They are RNs first and foremost. The NP is just like an extra level of training that elevates them to that mid-level nurse. And we know that you have to have standardized, whoopsie, you have to have standardized procedures in place. I'm used to highlighting things when I go through this, but I can't do it on these slides. And they may perform the assessment. So we all know that the NPs are doing your good faith exams, right? And every new patient has a good faith exam. Every patient has a good faith exam annually. And if they want a procedure that they haven't yet been cleared for, they're going to have a good faith exam before they have that procedure. You may be adding new things through the year. So let's say if someone had a GFE in January and in July you added a new procedure, they have to get a new GFE and be cleared for that new procedure that you've added. And you understand that you have the ability to furnish, and that if you're doing any control, you're not doing any controlled substances there, are you?
No, we're not.
You don't have to worry about the DEA. So we'll skip PAs. Just understand what your scope of practice and stay within it. As I said earlier, the physician is the final decider on hiring of providers and procedures offered. He has to sign off on that. You have your standardized procedures on site. Those are going to be signed annually by every provider and the doctor. And you want to keep those signature pages for 5 years, because I have seen the board come in and let's say something happened in 2022 and now it's almost 2024, and I had somebody in Melanie's position throw the old ones away from the year before, and the board wanted to know that those standardized procedures had been signed off on by the provider that was under investigation, and they didn't have proof of that. And that cost them extra money because they didn't have proof of that. So it's really important to keep those. Also, Melanie has, you and Dr. DeCourty will do your monthly reviews of the clinic. You have your documentation for that. That keeps you guys safe. So let's talk about charting. So charting is important to talk about because this is a place where I've seen people get in a lot of trouble. And when you're working and you're in a busy, active practice, sometimes we get busy and we skip over things and we forget to do things. You all learned how to chart in nursing school, right? And I'm sure you've all worked in other medical environments like hospitals or other doctors' offices where charting was, you were doing your charting. And you have an EMR, right, Melanie?
Yes, we do.
So you have an EMR set up for your charting. I'll tell you a couple of stories. I had a nurse who just got her NP certificate, and she had a patient complain about an uneven lip. And she came in and said, or called and said, my lip is uneven. The nurse did the right thing. And she said, come in, let's look at it. Well, she said, because it was just the next day, she said, wait 2 weeks, there's swelling. You signed a consent form, this, we all know that it takes a couple of weeks for that swelling to go down. And so you see what you're really left with if you had a lip enhancement, right? So she said, wait 2 weeks and then come in and we'll look at it. And in 2 weeks, they said, we will dissolve it if you want us to. And the patient said, no. And she went running around to other practices and people told her, oh, that person did a horrible job and we're going to fix you and all this. And 8 months later, she came back to the practice and said, okay, I want it dissolved. And my client said to her, I always dissolve gratis if the patient comes back within the first 6 months. I offered to dissolve it. It's been 8 months. It's $600 to dissolve the filler. And the patient was not about that, got very upset. And in medical aesthetics, medical malpractice cases are very rare because for the most part, notwithstanding a vascular occlusion, the level of harm that can be caused by the kind of treatments you all provide does not have an economic value that would inspire a plaintiff's attorney to bring a lawsuit, a medical malpractice lawsuit. I've seen this happen twice, and they were both having to do with laser hair removal burns with laser away because they don't calibrate their machines regularly. They don't have a laser safety protocol in place, and their providers don't, and sometimes they even have like non-nurses I need to turn my air conditioning on. They have non-nurses operating those machines. I have heard of that. And they don't know how to do the appropriate setting for the appropriate, person's skin. So that I did see a medical malpractice claim arise out of, because it was second-degree burns. It was really bad. But for the most part, medical malpractice is rare in medical aesthetics. But what does happen is when patients get upset, they have one other place to go, and that's the med board or the nursing board. In this case, the patient went to the nursing board, made a complaint against this provider, and because the patient made the complaint, the patient's charts were available and provided to the board. Well, the charts were deficient, and they were deficient as follows. The nurse did not record the vial number on products that she used on this patient. You have to do that. She did not record the expiration date. And, part of the reason for that, of course, is to use not expired medication, but also if there's something wrong with a certain batch of medication, we can follow up and find out which one it was. But also, this, you're not supposed to use a vial on more than one person. It's a one use. So, and she didn't chart the back and forth she had with the patient when she was complaining about the uneven lip, the phone calls, the offer to come in, they offered to see the physician. She did do the right things, but she didn't chart them. And as far as the board's concerned, if it didn't happen, if it's not in the chart, it didn't happen. So none of those things that she had to say that occurred could be used as evidence in this case. And to fail to chart these things and to fail to put that vial number down and the expiration date in the chart is a Business and Professions Code violation. This person got 3 years of probation. And what they do is they terminate your license. They revoke your license and they stay the revocation for the term of probation. And she paid a cost recovery fine. They initially wanted $20,000. I got them down to $10,500, which was a good negotiation, but she still paid me and she still paid that $10,000, and she was still on probation. And probation is not terrible, but it's on your license all the time. It will be there for the rest of your career that you were on probation and that this accusation has been filed against you. So we want to avoid that at all costs. And there's no reason for that to have happened, because you all learn how to chart. You know what you're doing. You know what you're supposed to do when you're charting. So you need to, the GFE has to be in the chart. Every time a patient comes in, they should be asked if they have any new allergies, if they're on any new medication, if they have any new health conditions. Because just because you did a good faith exam 2 months ago doesn't mean something might have changed in the meantime. And we've talked about, I talked to Melanie about medications and things to look out for. We are in the medical aesthetics industry. It's elective. People are coming to you to enhance their appearance. They're not coming to you because they've got an illness that you're curing. So they look at you in a different way than if they were going to their orthopedic surgeon or oncologist or any other practice that's treating a disease condition, and they look at you more as a service provider rather than this medical professional. So they hold you in a little less esteem. They may love you, but you know what I mean. So, and people are emotional about their faces, right? So you already have a couple of issues there that put you at risk. And if a patient is also appearing to be unstable in some kind of way, or if their medication profile makes them look unstable in some kind of way, then you can make a decision not to treat them to protect yourself. And there are things you can do, who's ever doing the scheduling. I'm sure you all aren't doing your scheduling of your own patients, but these are the things you want to look out for. You want to make sure that you chart that they receive the pre-treatment instructions, stay out of the sun, whatever, and then the post-care. And then any adverse incident or complaint, like the one that I just described to you, should be charted, even if you talk to them on the phone, okay? All communications regarding treatment, adverse incidents, complaints, follow-up care, and the physician is countersigning charts. For PAs and NPs, the legal requirement is 5%, but I always recommend 10%, Dr. DeCourty, because that just keeps you on the safe side. For RNs, you're 100% responsible for those charts. So technically you're supposed to countersign, or a PA can countersign those RN charts. Let's go to the next one.
Can an NP countersign or just only a PA?
No, an NP also. An NP can countersign, but then the doctor should okay, these are you guys talking to me. The doctor should still be countersigning 10% of those charts. And the signature should be legible, and or the name of the signatory should be printed there. So in your EMR, I'm sure it has that capacity. In some of the cases, I have another case that I just settled where they were using paper charts, and paper charts can just be a disaster because you don't have dot phrases, you don't have all these, things aren't necessarily written legibly, the charting is not always the same. So that can get really, a little risky. So does anybody, let me just stop and see if anybody has questions about those things, supervision and charting right now. No. Okay, good. Good. That means you guys know what you're supposed to be doing. So let's talk about a touchy subject, and that is patient communication. So,
Sorry.
Yeah.
Going back to the beginning, you had mentioned if state were to come in, asking questions about the facility or the med spa, we have the right to say, the doctor isn't here.
Give me your card and I will have him or the attorney contact you. And that's
Okay.
it. Let me just, I was going to say something else about that. So the very first investigation that I encountered, this was like 15 years ago, they secret shopped the med spa, and they will do this if they get a complaint that, for instance, there's no GFEs being done. And who's complaining? Patients? Anyone can make an anonymous complaint. I've seen competitors do it. I've seen ex-partners do it, ex-boyfriends, ex-girlfriends, ex-husbands, ex-wives do it out of spite. It's terrible, terrible thing to do against someone for their license. So they might come knocking on your door, but they also might secret shop you, and they will make an appointment. They'll come in, they'll pretend to be a patient. They'll dance you to the altar. They'll never get a treatment, but they'll get the GFE. So in this case, the nurse, it was a nurse at that time, she's an NP now, but her PA wasn't there that day. She had a PA doing the GFEs. And this was before we were doing the virtual GFEs. So she just, threw caution to the wind and saw the patient anyway. And it happened to be an investigator from the board. And she got 3 years of probation. She got a huge $30,000 in cost recovery. And not only that, she couldn't work in that practice. She couldn't work in medical aesthetics for those 3 years. So she had to go get a job for a doctor for 3 years while she kind of managed it still, because anyone can manage it. She just couldn't treat people in that business. So it was not, these are not chances that you want to take. So let's talk about HIPAA. You know what HIPAA is, you know what PHI is. All patient communication must be done in a HIPAA compliant manner. What are HIPAA compliant communication methodologies? In person, by telephone, by fax, or a HIPAA compliant messaging system. Now, your EMR might have a HIPAA compliant one-way messaging system. We talked about this, Melanie, and when I was talking to Jacqueline and Melanie on the phone, Texting patients is an absolute hard pass. No, it's HIPAA non-compliant. It's a violation. Do not do it. Patients, and you understand the word patient versus the word client. This is a medical practice. These people are patients, not clients. Providers, individual providers should not have access to patients. You should not have patients' personal numbers in your phone at all. There is one that I know of. There might be more. And I told Jacqueline and Melanie about this. There's a HIPAA compliant texting app called Tiger Connect. And if, management wants to have this available, they will provide it to the business. Providers should never contact patients on their personal phones. Instagram messaging is not HIPAA compliant. Okay. I'm going to talk about Instagram for a minute. So some providers have their own Instagram accounts and they have themselves listed as a medical provider. If you do that, and I advise that the clinics do not allow providers to present themselves to the public as a medical provider on their own Instagram, because there are a lot of pitfalls that can come up. I had a woman who, in LA, she's in show business. She had a name that wasn't her complete legal name. It was her first and middle name. And she had that on her Instagram and said, I'm just going to make up a name, Mary Jane, aesthetic nurse or nurse injector or whatever. That was not her legal name on her license. And so that's fraud against the public, because the public, number one, it's fraud because the public cannot use that name and look you up on the nursing board website and find your license. So that's not first problem. Second problem is that she did not identify the medical director in the bio portion of the Instagram. There should be, if you are allowed to do it, and I don't know what the policy here is, I don't remember. There should be a link to the practice website, and there should be the name of the medical director up there. And you may not post pictures of patients unless the consent form that you use in the clinic says the clinic can use my pictures and so can this provider. And if you are doing this and all those ducks are in a row, when you leave that clinic, you must scrub the pictures of that clinic's patients out of your Instagram. And it's a lot of work. I've done it. I had a clinic have to rebrand one time because they used a name that they shouldn't have used, and it was a trademark violation. And we had to scrub their, including taking the colors out of it, because the colors were so associated in the public eye with this iconic brand that they were using the name of. And it's a lot of work and it's expensive. So
just to clarify on that last part, scrubbing the photos, what do you mean? Like, can you explain that?
You have to delete them. So let's say, I work for your clinic here and you allow me, and I have a compliant Instagram and it has the name of the clinic there. It has the link to the clinic website. It has Dr. DeCourty's name in there. And we have the consent form that says that not only can the clinic use the patient pictures, but so can me as a provider. I can too. If I leave, I must delete pictures of all the patients from your clinic when I leave.
Gotcha.
So that's really important. Any pictures of the clinic at all should be removed, because you shouldn't be associated with that clinic if you're no longer working there. Mm-hmm. Never should we be Instagram messaging. Oops, see, I keep doing that, trying to highlight it, and that doesn't work. We should never be Instagram or Facebook or any of TikTok messaging patients, ever. If they either you turn your messaging off and you have a link that says contact us here, or if they do message you, you say contact us here through this HIPAA compliant messaging service. Don't even respond. Because if they message you and say, how much is Botox? Okay, now we have the patient identifying information, and we have a service that they want. And if you get involved in that, now you have a HIPAA violation. Do you see what I mean? Because if we talk about medical care and we have identifying patient information, we've got a HIPAA violation. And even if they started it, you're still liable for that. So really important. Okay. Any questions on this?
So I have a question.
Sure.
You can hear me. So what if it's like, if you text a patient, it has nothing to do with their treatment, or could you just like, hey, can you come at like,
Even
time?
no,
Really?
even appointment times are not, because that
Really?
has to do with medical care.
Okay.
And also, Dr. DeCourty, it just loosens things. And then they're going to start saying to you, oh, but my this and my that. Now you've got a HIPAA violation because you invited them into that forum that
Right.
is not compliant. You see what I mean? So and listen, I get it, but listen, Dr. DeCourty, in any other practice that isn't medical aesthetics, do you know of anyone who's texting patients?
No.
Right, exactly. My point. Why? Because it's a HIPAA violation. Now we have these, and I pick up my phone. We have these apps for scheduling that
Right.
Clinics have, but it's not two-way. I can't answer back and say I'm not going to be there. It's going to go into a black hole, because heaven knows what I might say, number one, and number two, they don't want that back and forth between the reception person. Phone, fax, in person, HIPAA compliant messaging systems. So Tiger, and I called the Tiger Connect people and I looked at it and they say it's HIPAA compliant. So I haven't done a test on it, but you can look into that and see. There might be other ones out there too that you can use. And it's an extra step and it's a little extra money, but this stuff, these complaints are not worth it. They're not worth the little convenience. And you have to train your patients. Just like I'm emphasizing to you, this is a medical practice like any other practice. You have to train, and that's also going to elevate their level of respect for you, because when I mentioned before about how they kind of look at this as the beauty industry and you're a service provider and all this blah blah blah. This is another way to kind of elevate your status in their minds. So
Deborah, I have a quick question. In regards, so does that pertain to every provider and patient? For example, surgeon, did surgery on a patient and they wanted to follow up how they're doing. A great doctor, I think, would be like, hey, text me anytime, any issues, text me. So that's
not, this is unlawful. Listen, girl, you're a young little chicken there. I
really, but
found a couple of decades than you.
Yes.
And texting is relatively new. There might have been texting since you were born, but we didn't even have back in my day, we had a phone that had a wire that was connected to the wall, and we would either have a phone on a really long cord and we'd walk around the house, or we'd have a phone in every room. So this is all relatively new, and industry and government takes a while to catch up with technology. When I started practicing law, insurance companies would not even fax 25 years ago, because there was confidential information when we were talking about, client issues. You had to mail them. They wouldn't even fax, let alone email. And there are still government agencies like the IRS and the medical board where you have to have wet signed. How many FNPs have you signed, Dr. DeCourty, in blue ink and mailed to me?
Plenty.
A bunch, right? And because I have to have the doctor's signature in blue ink, his hard signature here, and I have to mail it to the medical board because they want to avoid fraud. Even DocuSign, there can be fraud. I mean, anybody could have forged this, but at least you have a much better claim that it was really that doctor who signed it. So, you know, I know this technology is really convenient, but it's not always necessarily the safest thing for us.
I have a quick question.
Yes,
This probably applies to emailing too, right?
emailing too,
This is
unless,
why, okay, so we should be emailing the patients.
oh, unless you have a secure, like who has you don't have to say. If you have an investment account with like Schwab or Pershing or Morgan Stanley, you do not email them documents. They send you a secure link to upload documents into. When I'm defending these accusations with the boards, they use Box. It's like Dropbox, but it's, you know, it's called Box, and that's how we transfer information. I have a secure messaging system within my law practice management software where I can provide documents to clients and they can provide documents back. And it has that double authentication process where you get a code and have to type it in to make sure it's really that person. So you know how you'll log into a system and they're going to text you a code and they text it to your phone or they call you with it, and then you have to put it into the computer. So it's a double device authentication. That's what you need for to be HIPAA compliant. Okay. Good questions though, guys. Okay.
Sorry, I had one question, last question. So for when I have visits to the doctor, like my regular doctor, they're always calling me to remind me of my schedule. So I'm wondering if this only applies to personal phone or if it's also applied to work phones.
No, but they call you.
They call me to remind me of my appointment and to confirm
The phone call.
through phone call. Yes.
Not the provider's personal phone that's calling you.
No, it's a work phone. It's usually an office phone, and we well, I don't know if we still have him now, but we had the work phones at Lifted Beauty. So Melanie, I don't know if we're still using our work phones or if that's tied to the business or how we should set that up.
Yeah,
And-
we're calling from one number. Well, there's a few different ways we've been doing it, but yeah, I guess.
Yeah,
what
so
you're saying is
it's
as
not
long as it's a call.
it's not a nurse or a patient management person calling you on their personal cell phone. They're calling from the practice phone. And that's something that, you know, you have to organize, Melanie, to get. And you know, in a perfect world, there should be like a central person, like a receptionist type person or group, you know, when you walk into a doctor's office, there's all,
I call our patients back from our business line.
yeah, sure. So that's how it should be.
They're called back from the Lifted Beauty number.
Yes.
And that's how we take care of that. The only thing we need to really clean up is this HIPAA compliant texting. We've got to figure that out. So, and this is great information.
Yeah. You know, I'm always looking for solutions. Like I stand on this compliant mountain and preach because I've seen it go so many times, and I don't want this to happen to any of you, and neither do you. You've worked too hard for those licenses. Listen, I have a girl right now who came from Arizona, and in Arizona, NPs are independent in Arizona in some areas of medicine. She moved here to get her California nursing license. All she had to do is fill out an application. To get her NP certificate, all she had to do is fill out an application. She didn't get any training. She didn't get any information. They just approved the application. There's one little line on the back of the nursing application that says, here's a link to the Nursing Practices Act. That's it. She goes to a clinic. It's a med spa, looks legit. It's a big, busy clinic. There's people treating patients there. It's been there a long time. She gets a job. She's working. Come to find out, it's not even owned by a doctor. It's a general stock corporation, not a professional corporation, which is illegal. And the general stock corporation is owned by this nurse and her husband, who's not even licensed in any way. They get investigated. Everybody gets an accusation filed against them. The owner nurse surrendered her license. My girl quit because they were doing shady stuff, like talking about, I mean, this is some of the ridiculous things they did. They said, oh, we noticed that you guys really only take 20 minutes to eat. So we're going to stop your 30-minute meal periods and you have to eat in 20 minutes now. I mean, how illegal is that? And then they were saying like, you need to shorten the amount of time it takes to provide this service to a patient. Well, that's dangerous when you start doing that. And we want you to reuse the microneedling needles.
Oh my God.
So she quit immediately, went and got a job somewhere else. In the meantime, there's an accusation filed against her. I prepared this beautiful mitigation package talking about how good she is. And she came here from Arizona, didn't know any better, looked like a duck, quacked like a duck, but lo and behold, it wasn't a duck. And they didn't even give me a counter offer. They want 3 years of probation and a full cost recovery. It's terrible.
Oh,
It's terrible. So you have to be responsible for yourself and pay attention to these things and not rely on other people to take care of you. You know, I mean, you're in good hands in this med spa because Melanie cares and she wants to do everything right, which is why I'm here, you know. So but it's a scary, dangerous out there. So let's talk about patient complaints. So let's go back to the woman with the uneven lip. First of all, we're going to chart everything. Every conversation on the phone with them, every interaction, you know, once they've, you know, complained about something, you want to write everything in that chart. Make sure that, you know, and if you all get a patient complaint, you need to get Melanie and or Dr. DeCourty involved immediately, right? Because you don't want to handle that yourself. That's outside of your wheelhouse. You want to make sure that they have an offer to see the NP or the MD immediately, depending on how severe the thing that they're complaining about is. And, you know, a lot of people are just lazy and they don't want to come in, and a lot of people just want to complain. So you want to make sure you offer that to them once or twice and try to get them in and follow up until the patient is satisfied. You know, the woman with the $600 to dissolve the filler, if she had just dissolved that filler for free, the girl probably wouldn't have filed the complaint against her. So for $600, she could have saved herself a lot of headache and thousands of dollars. So when somebody's iffy, you're better off to just eat the $600. It's not worth it. The highest ranking person in the practice, which is going to be either Dr. DeCourty or Melanie, can offer a refund, but we want to make sure we get a signed release of claims. You all are not going to be handling this. Even Jacqueline shouldn't be handling this. It should be Melanie or Dr. DeCourty. That's it. Refer everything to them. Okay, probably mostly Melanie because she's there. But if it needs to get elevated to Dr. DeCourty, then he needs to know about it too. Okay. And I have a release of claims. I have kind of a generic one that you can use, but I really prefer that you know, let me know this is going on so that I can, you know, make that release of claims specific to that situation. So we know what the treatment was, how much money we're giving them back. Now, the release of claims does not cover board complaints. So you can never have someone sign away their right to make a board complaint. All they're doing is they're signing away their right to sue you in court. And they are signing a non-disparagement clause, which says they're not going to say anything negative about you or the provider or the practice anywhere, including on the review site, social media, Yelp, Google, all that stuff, right? So that's what the release of claims protects us for. You know, do people breach them? Yes, but they're less likely to if they know they've signed that thing, you know, because what you don't want to do is give someone $600 or $800 or $1,200 back and then for them to slam you on Yelp or something, right? And let's just talk about that for a minute.
Deborah, can I ask you one question real quick? What are your thoughts on, we're considering bringing a nurse, her name's Sharon. She's currently studying legal. I don't know what the legal term is to get her something legal in nursing in aesthetics. so that she can be a dedicated person that could kind of help us managing, not that we get a ton of them, but can help us kind of manage the complaints or give advice to the nurse, or like, is that okay to bring someone
That's
else
a good
to?
idea. I think you should have her interface with me for a while, just so that, you know, we know that she knows what she's doing. But just to have a compliance person on site is a good idea.
Right. Okay. Awesome. Yeah, I'm going to connect you guys because she's currently studying for her legal on that.
Yeah, I don't know what that is, but I mean, I've had nurses who are med legal nurses who serve as expert witnesses on cases. But, and, you know, might be advisors on different cases, but I don't know exactly what this is. But I'm absolutely, that's a good idea to have someone dedicated to that. And then just make sure that we interface for a while so that I can approve, you know, what she's doing.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, anything about patient complaints? You know what to do. Yes.
I guess we're just trying to dial in. I know you said it should go to the highest ranking, but let's say what we were thinking now. So client calls, they complain.
It's
We
okay.
want to ask them for a photo, and then they send us the photo, and then we were going to show it to whichever nurse.
How are they sending that photo?
Well, right now they're sending it through a system called DYL, but I know you said we need to get the.
They're texting it to the business line.
Yeah, but that's not HIPAA compliant.
Okay, so then we're just trying to get the flow down. We will look into Tiger and Connect for that. But so then we would show it to the nurse who did the injections, and then that nurse would determine, okay, this needs to go to a higher ranking nurse, or this patient needs to go to the emergency. Is that like a okay flow to have?
I wouldn't let that nurse make much of a decision on it. I think that if it's an RN, then he or she should get at least the NP on board and say, this is my plan to tell this patient
Okay.
that, like with the swollen lip. I mean, the obvious response to that is, you know, take a look at your consent form. This was provided by the manufacturer. And you could also, instead of having them send you photos, you could FaceTime with them.
Mhm.
And then you could snap the photo while you're FaceTiming with them.
Okay.
You know what I mean? You could take a screenshot while you're FaceTiming with them.
So what about me as the RN? Because I only have my RN. So do I have to, before I respond to that client, do I have to consult with an NP, you think? Or?
Once you see it, Melanie, I think that you should at least chart that you know, talk to the NP about it. I think it would be really helpful that you talk to the NP or Dr. DeCourty about the issue.
Okay.
And then, you know, that you're going to say, look, you know, I talked to the NP, I talked to Dr. DeCourty, you know, on the consent form. Remember how it says that swelling can last for a couple weeks, and, you know, you can put some ice on it. You can put some arnica gel on it. Come in and we'll give you some arnica gel or whatever you guys would do. I'm just making things up, you know, that I know of. And, you know, in 2 weeks, if it's still, you know, is whatever, uneven or whatever, there's bruising or what. I mean, it's common to have bruising. They're uneven. People swell in different ways. You know, I mean, it just happens. You know this. So
I have a quick question. So this is common. It's like, we'll use the same, my lip is uneven. So a patient comes in, this is an example. They were treated by, let's say, Nurse Andrea on a Saturday, and they call the office on a Monday. My lip looks funny, but really they're just in that time frame where their lip is still healing. Could Andrea rule that out, FaceTime that patient, and then find out if it needs to, hey, maybe it doesn't need to escalate to the doctor? Would she be able to rule that out first?
she shouldn't be FaceTiming that patient on her personal phone.
Well, I'm not from the personal phone, but if we were following the flow that you would lay down, like a FaceTime from the nurse.
There in the practice, then absolutely she can. And is Andrea an NP?
No, that would just be the nurse that treated. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, what if it's just during the healing time and it doesn't warrant a complaint? How do we differentiate it?
What I'm saying is, for your own protection, the nurse should not make the call.
Right, but what if it's really not a complaint? What if it's a confused client and they're really just swollen?
Listen
We
to
have that too.
Jacqueline, listen to the example I gave. That was exactly this.
Okay, so the RN that took care of the procedure should not reply back to the patient. It should
Well,
just be the NP or
so
the doctor.
How is the patient contacting you, first of all?
Let's say
Listen-
they call me. Hi, Jacqueline. I was in there over the weekend and my lip is a bit swollen.
They
I think I need to see the nurse again.
Then you say that you can tell them to come in. You can have the nurse call them. You can have FaceTime with them, but I would chart that the nurse consulted with the NP.
Right, so then that nurse would call the patient, right, because that nurse treated the patient, and then they would absolutely chart that conversation, right, that post-care call or whatever we call it. But then how would we, what if they rule out that it's not an actual complaint? Would that be okay? Do you think that would still need to be seen by?
If the patient calms down and says, oh, okay,
Mm-hmm.
but I still think you should chart.
Oh, so always chart regardless. Okay, got that.
I just think it's for your own protection, guys. You should chart that the nurse talked to the NP.
NP or the doctor. Gotcha. Okay.
Nurse, you know, can't really make a call on anything. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Deborah, very quick, is FaceTime HIPAA compliant?
Well, FaceTime is because it doesn't last in the phone.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Whereas texting lasts in the phone. Do you see the difference?
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, now I can't see my cursor on this thing. Oh, it's going to work. Okay. So, common compliance pitfalls. We talked about the social media. The website also, and I think we're going to look at the website. I think we might have talked about the website. The website should be very clearly have Dr. DeCourty's picture when it has about us or our team. You know, Dr. Behrang DeCourty, medical director, and then a little blurb about him, specifically highlighting his experience in aesthetics. And then the rest of the team is fine. When you have your Yelp account, so this is another thing that the woman I told you with the first and the middle name got in trouble with, because on her Yelp account, because they dug into that. And, you know, sometimes it depends on the investigator. They just dig in sometimes and they're just looking for something, you know, because this is their job. On the Yelp site, you know, where it says owner,
Yes.
that should say Dr. DeCourty, not Melanie. Because even though you might be both shareholders of the PC, this girl, it was the same thing, and she got in trouble for having her name there.
Okay.
So if there's any place where it says owner and you know you can only put one name, we always want to defer to the physician. Okay. Patient communication, we talked about that. So one thing that I corrected on here, and this is really important, we want to refer to these people as patients. Where the hell is my cursor on here, and why can I not admit this person? Somebody is in the waiting room and I can't find the freaking cursor. Oh my God. Oh, there it is. There it is. There it is. There's my cursor. Okay, somebody just joined us. Try, I know it's a habit to say clients, but it's better for you to say patients because they understand their patients. It gets you in the mindset of medical practice, and anyone else who's listening to you understands that you understand it's a medical practice, okay? This is a review of things we already talked about. We talked about this. if you get a claim, if you get an investigation, you notify me, or if you've got coverage from a insurance attorney, or if I've retired, it's possible you guys will still be rolling along when I'm retired. Do not negotiate with patients on your own, and do not give refunds without that release, that liability waiver. Okay, this is more for Melanie, but for any of you, if you're there and someone knocks on the door, I mean, you've never had this, have you?
No, we haven't.
Good, so that means you're doing something right. I mean, you have a pretty tight system there. What were you gonna say, Dr. DeCourty? Were you saying something? No? Okay.
No, I don't.
No. I didn't say anything.
Okay, so criminal liability, I just like to cover some of these things. Unauthorized practice of medicine. I've seen this happen where a lay person was treating patients. This happened during COVID. It was terrible. Assault and battery. If a patient is touched in a wrong way, I've seen this happen. We know that's never going to happen here, but I've seen it happen. And then
like in what way? Just, was it something innocent, or was it?
I've seen like inappropriate touching by providers. There's a couple cases where there were doctors who were,
Gotcha.
being inappropriate. I had this happen years ago with a dentist. There's a doctor in the Bay Area who's being sued for wrongful death because he was self-medicating. He wasn't ever my client. He was self-medicating. He was dating patients. He was giving them drugs. And he was dating this girl who was unstable, giving her drugs, and she committed suicide. It was horrible.
Oh my gosh.
Speaking of that, you had mentioned if we suspect mental illness, that should that be part of the good faith exam process?
Covered that, Jacqueline. I covered it earlier, and I want to be really careful about how I talk about that in this open forum.
Sure.
But you guys heard me loud and clear about that, okay? And everybody, I did cover that. It's all about risk. And that's actually this slide, right? So we want to make sure that we are doing our GFEs.
Right, would that be, that would be for the NP though, right, or the PA to take care of?
Well, whoever is doing the intake on the patient, whoever's asking them, every patient, this is what I said earlier before you got on, every patient who walks in the door, this is what I told you guys on the phone or the Zoom or whatever it was we were doing. Even if it's been a month since they had their GFE and they've been cleared for everything that you do, whoever is meeting them is going to ask, if it's a receptionist or whoever, any new allergies, are you on any new medications, any changes in your health status? You want to listen for things that would raise liability issues, right? And I talked about, and what Jacqueline is bringing up is, I earlier talked about how, people look at this more as a service and not necessarily medicine, and they're emotional about their faces. And if a patient seems at all off, and, intuition is gold, and you don't feel right about it, whoever's doing the intake on that person, you don't have to treat someone.
Yeah, I just had mentioned that because I know that sometimes we've had a couple of patients that you can tell there were some issues probably about a doctor, so I can't truly diagnose or whatever, but they weren't forthcoming on any medication that they were on. So I just want to know if that was something that maybe the PA had to actually ask instead of just generalizing, or if that's just something I don't have to worry about.
You're going to fill that out on their GFE chart. You're going to ask them all those things on their chart. You can ask them if you've ever had, mental health treatment, if you've ever had.
We don't ask that particular question on the GFE. So I'm just wondering if that's.
No, the NPs and PAs asked that, Jacqueline, on the.
Oh, for the mental one? Oh, okay. I don't.
Oh, do they ask specific on mental? I'm not sure.
I've never heard it unless they've changed it.
You can ask about medication. You can ask anything you want, but I think that you guys just have to kind of rely on your judgment there.
Okay.
So
Pretty good at that. I for the most part.
Starting, we talked about follow your procedures, provide them with your pre-care and aftercare instructions. And if someone comes in for laser, I don't know if you guys do laser hair removal, but they come in, you see they're tan, they've been in the sun all weekend, you know that's a no. You know, you have to use your eyes, and even if they lie to you, which they will do,
Right.
so don't take that chance. It's not worth $1,000 to have damage done to a person.
Yeah.
So, as with everything, we have the end.
The end.
I do have a quick question. Can you just go over like compliance, like if an RN is just there and the diagnosing of like a product, do I have to be, or does a nurse have to be like, let me text the NP or the physician on what product to use, or who's gonna give the order of that medication?
You should have a standing order
Okay.
in your standardized procedures in your protocols. And
Yeah,
this
I mean,
order is going to give you a dosage. If a patient is cleared for a certain procedure by the GFE, you know you can do that procedure on them.
Gotcha. Okay.
You have the range of medication in your standing order. Don't
Okay.
go that range. Don't ever say, I think you need this much. Don't ever say
Gotcha.
an RN, okay? Because
Okay.
I've seen that get somebody in trouble.
Okay. Perfect.
I'll-
Thank you.
I'll show you the policy and procedure, Andrea, on the standing order. But so Deborah, how should the nurse say, so it's or what is the correct terminology? Because you're saying she shouldn't suggest a specific amount. What is the terminology?
You know, I mean, the appropriate amount is that's a way to say it. You know, our doctor recommends that kind of language, you know, even though let's just say it's 30 to 60 units of Botox for a particular site, right? And you're looking at them, you're probably going to make a judgment call on that, right, Andrea?
Yeah.
You're going to make a judgment call on, just don't say that you're doing that.
Gotcha.
Okay. Just
Mhm.
always defer to the higher authority.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Eileen, were you going to say something? You're muted.
I was going to ask what Melanie had asked, what is the appropriate verbiage to use for an RN? Because I had known a facility, they got in trouble for saying, well, I recommend this amount of Botox, and apparently.
Exactly right. That's exactly right. Who just joined us that's got no name? Who says
I know Sharon had the link. Maybe that's Nurse Sharon. I'm not sure.
maybe she's driving or something and she's just listening
Yeah.
and she herself. That's fine. I'm just curious.
Okay.
Okay. Other questions?
Anything specific we should know on vascular occlusion? What should we be doing? What's the steps? If as a nurse we see that and it's happening, I know you said documentation, so we'll definitely do that. But is there anything specific?
So, right. So I am not a medical provider, but Dr. DeCourty, what would you say on that?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that one more time?
If they notice that a vascular occlusion is happening, that they hit, you know, they misinjected and there's a vascular occlusion. I mean, will the ER know what? I don't think the ER is even going to know what to do about that. I think they have to go to you.
Yeah, at times they won't really know. Yeah, exactly. What to do. I mean, an ER. I mean, I work in the ER, you know, so an ER physician that I know is they're gonna consult you know, plastic
Like,
surgery,
yeah.
and it's gonna take forever, or they're gonna tell them to follow up with you know, whoever, you know, their own doctor, whatever. It's going to the ER is not gonna do anything. So
They need to call you immediately.
yeah,
And you drop what you're doing and deal with it, because you could have someone blinded or lose, I've seen this, lose a chunk of
Yeah,
their
absolutely.
nose in a liquid rhinoplasty situation, you know? So that's why we have Dr. DeCourty, because he's the expert in this area.
Yeah.
Okay. And are we,
Waste time. Don't freak out and try to mitigate it yourself. This happened. I have a doctor who, you know, it's been all over the news, did a breast aug on a patient in his office without an anesthesiologist. And he and the nurse did the anesthesia and she died. And she coded and they kept trying to revive, you know, they did CPR on her for something like 2 hours or something ridiculous. You know, who waits 2 hours? You need to not freak out and manage it and get them to the next level of care provision, you know, because you don't want it to get worse. So, you know, listen, we all make mistakes. I make mistakes a lot. My worst thing that I do is I can't read my own stuff and I have typos. And so I have a paralegal that goes through all my documents for me, because I'm kind of like dyslexic a little bit. So we have to know what our strengths and weaknesses are. This is why we have Dr. DeCourty here, right?
yep.
Correct.
Okay, we'll dial that in and maybe get on a, I don't know, separate call at some point with that. One more another question that's coming to mind on the social media Instagram site, from what you've seen in all the cases that you do, is far, because we do run a lot of Instagram ads, you know, from the marketing standpoint. Is there something that you, when we're making our ads and we're showing, you know, how we can improve, is there something you think we shouldn't say or should or show or not show?
A good question. So you got my email with those videos in it, right?
Yes, but I need to re-go over them.
There's a short 22-minute one on marketing. So
Okay.
watch first. And as I said, a lot of stuff in there that I don't even totally remember. As long as you identify the medical practice in the ad, you're going to have a link to your website or some scheduling app, right?
Mhm.
And they are going to be able to see. We want to make sure that Dr. DeCourty is identified in all your materials. They're going to see that he's there. Then, if you're going to use before and after pictures, you have to make sure that your patient has signed a release to use those pictures for marketing purposes. You don't identify the patient, right? And, you know, just don't make dramatic claims that you can't be 100% sure of. I mean, you're in medicine, so you are treating people and you're making a huge difference. You're making a huge difference in their appearance with these treatments. That's what we're here for. And they are effective, right? And they've been tested and they're FDA approved. And that's another thing that I didn't bring up. If you're doing, you know, we know that there are a lot of devices and medications that are being used in aesthetics for non-FDA approved purposes. If you're doing that, they need to sign a consent form saying that, you know, this Ozempic is not FDA approved for this purpose. I don't know if you're doing that. I hope you're not, but
No.
you know, I mean, I think they're rife with problems with that. But at any rate, you know, they have to sign off on the fact that this is an FDA approved medication, but not for the purpose we're using it for.
Gotcha.
Deborah, I have one question. Sorry to interrupt. Regarding the HIPAA violation, if a patient thinks they're having a vascular occlusion and we can't give them our personal phone, like in the middle of the night, what do you recommend? And obviously we're not open 24/7. Should we have a 24/7 hotline number, or like, how do we go about that if we
Just
can't
like
even use the work phone?
Just like any other practice, you know, when I call my orthopedic surgeon, and if it was 2017 and I just had surgery, and I was having a problem, they have an emergency line. First of all, it says, if you're having an emergency, hang up and call 911. That's what the message should say. If you need to talk to the doctor on call or the provider on call, press 7, whatever it is.
Okay.
And then, you know, I don't know how those systems work exactly, but there's got to be a way to get to someone. And maybe it's, you know, Melanie, and maybe it's Dr. DeCourty getting awakened in the middle of the night or in the middle of his shift, right? But if there's a problem, have you had that happen ever?
No.
So hopefully it never will, but you should have, you know, some kind of a message on your voicemail for the practice that gives them those options. You know, if you're having an emergency, hang up immediately and call 911. If you need to talk to the provider on duty, physician on duty, and it really should be either an NP or the doctor, because if someone's having a middle of the night emergency, that's not something that a nurse can make a call on.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Eileen, ask your network of NPs if any of them want to be on call for us.
Okay, will do.
I talk about the W-2 thing, Melanie.
We talked about it last time. Yeah. Mhm.
Is everybody W-2?
No.
Do you want me to talk about that?
If you'd like.
So I want to tell you guys something, because I think this change is happening here. It is unlawful for providers other than physicians to be W-2 employees of a medical practice. I mean, to be 1099 independent contractors of a medical practice. Under Assembly Bill 5, which arose out of this case in 2018 called Dynamex, you guys need to be W-2 employees. You might not like that, but it's my advice is that it's going to happen. So I'm just telling you.
Yeah.
It's not because.
So you said
Pardon?
physicians can't. You said physicians can't be 1099.
Physicians can be 1099. So.
Okay.
Physicians are carved out. Doctors, lawyers, CPAs, architects, top of the food chain licensees that don't require any supervision at all can be carved out of that. Also gig workers, like when that law first happened, one of the things that, like musicians and dancers who are performing in nightclubs and stuff, were under the way the law was written, they had to be W-2 employees, which is ridiculous because you have these like traveling acts that go from place to place. And they carved out gig workers, and then they carved out outside salespeople. So those people that knock on your door trying to sell you solar or whatever, they can be 1099 because they're out in they figure their own thing out. They don't have to be supervised. And, you know, these top of the food chain licensees.
I have a question, and this might be for a different call, but what if because some of like the girls on the line are just, you know, maybe helping out a few hours a month or something like that. Yeah. What if they're if they're part of it under a different company, under the management side?
No, they're providing medical services, unless it's Jacqueline who's providing admin services.
Right, or marketing or something different.
Now, marketing, by the way, that can be a 1099 because and we'll talk about this more another time and I'll explain all that, but marketing can be an outside service.
Yeah.
Your lawyer, your bookkeeper, your CPA, your marketing person, your web designer, those can be outside services that can be 1099. But if it's a provider.
Yeah. Okay.
So when Melanie moves you guys to W-2, you can blame me instead of better for you anyway. It's better for you in a lot of ways. I worked for myself most of my life, and I'm, you know, built my career, and I'm at the level, and I'm getting ready to retire in the next 10 years. And I'm looking at, you know, when you get old, you get these Social Security letters that tell you how much you're going to get for Social Security if you start collecting now. And the more you're on W-2, the more your Social Security builds up. So it's really to your benefit.
Yeah.
That way. And you're going to pay taxes on it anyway. It either comes out later or it comes out now. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So better for you guys.
okay.
Anything else, beautiful ladies and gentlemen?
Oh, I could be here all night, but I know we
You
don't have time.
you have access to me.
Yeah,
And now,
I-
everyone, pardon,
I have some separate questions, I guess.
you
Really
can
doesn't
actually, why don't you
else
book
Melanie probably, but I
Yeah,
could.
why don't you book a call with me, Dr. DeCourty? Go into my scheduling app. It's in my email. It says schedule a call there. You can book a call with me.
I'll send you her email. Mhm.
Yeah,
I got it.
yeah.
Yeah, I got it.
The rest of you do not contact me by email. You have my email address, but I cannot talk to you by email. So don't use it. I'm not allowed to. It's an ethical violation.
Yeah, and I think I just would, and I'll talk to you separately, but would love to do like, yearly compliance because things are constantly changing, laws are changing and products are coming, it's just so many changes. So I definitely want to do regular compliance calls.
Yeah, for sure. And I also, you're on my email list and I send things out regularly. Like I sent that thing out today about mobile clinics and all the, I don't know if you saw it, but when new things come up, I send out those emails with new information in them. So,
Are you
and
saying it's the lifted email or your email, Mel? Is it going to you or
Right.
Lifted?
whoever's in my, I think it's probably Melanie, who's ever in my system, it's probably Melanie.
I'll check. I'll forward it.
I think you're in there,
Okay.
Jackie, but I can't remember. So anyway,
Awesome.
all I can tell you is if you want a mobile clinic, it's a pain in the neck. You have to jump through hoops of fire blindfolded.
Oh my God.
Risky. It's risky. So I don't recommend it, but a lot of people like to do it. Anyway. Okay. All right. Have a lovely evening. It was great being with you guys. Great meeting you all. You have such a fantastic team here.
Thank you.
You're gonna do great work.
Thank
Before
you.
you go,
Jen and I will be sending out notes to everyone, guys, and we'll implement everything that Deborah suggests. So
Sounds great.
all right.
Okay.
Thanks, guys. Have a good night.
I have
Okay, bye.